Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Welcome and welcome back to You Bleeping Nerds. UBN, the podcast where we bring you nerd stuff, nerd news, episode breakdowns, keeping you up on the industry and just, hanging out with you. You know, I am your humble host. I'm that guy. I am the skipper, the captain of this ship. It's your boy A. Nice to be here with you all today. Here on a Friday. We bring you this podcast 2 times a week, bringing you news from the industry, the latest of episode announcements, and then we give you episode breakdowns of whatever we're watching over here at You Bleeping Nerds. On Monday, last episode, we brought you Kaiju number 8 episode breakdown. Go back and check that out. All Kaiju hell broke loose. We covered it over there on Monday. I love that show. Love Kafka. Love Hoshino. If you guys listen to the show, shout out to the people who, my faithful listeners. You guys coming back every episode. I appreciate you guys. Share the podcast with your homies. Thank you for being my homie, my bleeping homie. My team. I love you guys. I do this to because I love it. And this is a fun way to help me, follow and cover the industry. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys. And like I said, join all the stuff. Join all the stuff. Join the socials. You can find us on Twitter, X, Zitter, Twitter, whatever. You can find us over there at Bleepin' Nerd, Big B, Big N. Go check us out there. Subscribe to the YouTube. You Bleepin' Nerds, Big U, Big B, Big N. And if you're on Reddit, subscribe to the Reddit. We got a little Reddit over there too. You know what I'm saying? But like and subscribe to the podcast. Share the podcast. Tell your homies, come hang out with us, man. I'm having a lot of fun. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun. But yeah, before we get into this episode breakdown, we're going to do Gachiakuta. Something I haven't covered yet. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. This was one of my most anticipated shows of the fall season. Definitely was on my short list. It just had great pedigree. The manga is beautiful, guys. If you guys have never heard of this show or if you guys never read the manga, go ahead and read the manga. We're an anime-only podcast here. Only so many hours in the day. But it was definitely something I was looking forward to. It's not an isekai, thank God. You guys know how I feel about isekai. But the anime up to this point, we're at episode 11. We're going to break down episode 11 in our second segment. The anime itself, to me, wasn't quite up to the standard I was hoping it would be. It was okay. I don't want anybody thinking like, oh my God, he's shitty on Gachiakuta. Like, no, that's not the case, guys. Shout out to my little brother Raven. You guys are gonna see him on this podcast at some point. Raven gets on me because him and his people love Gachiakuta. He loves it. It's his jam, And there was some stuff I could appreciate about Gachiakuta. But it took a few more episodes than I usually would prefer with an anime, in my opinion, for them to really get going. Right? I think it took probably 2 or 3 episodes, a little too long. Some of the potential higher scenes, like the fight scenes with Jabber and the bandits, was supposed to be some of the higher watermark of the anime, and to me, I thought that arc and that scene kind of fell flatter than I think anyone was expecting, particularly from the manga. That's a well-liked scene. Jabber's a well-liked character from the manga, and that I thought that scene would hit a little harder. I thought his introduction would hit a little harder, so I was a little underwhelmed. I don't want to say disappointed because I would definitely say by episode 6 or 7, this show really started to find itself for me. and really started to hit its stride, particularly with its art. But we're not gonna break it down right now. Just letting you guys know in the second segment, that's what we're gonna cover. We're gonna break down episode 11. But before we get off to that, we're gonna get into some bleeping nerd news. Bleeping nerd news. Da da da. A couple of items in the industry today. I try to bring you guys a little bit from around the world of animation and comics and animated storytelling, just to show you guys what's happening. Stuff that's interesting to me. So we're gonna hop into our nerd segment, our bleeping nerd news. First story we have here, some light news, not really all that news, but it's it's important to me, and it gives me an opportunity to talk about something I want to talk about, because it's my show. Dr. Stone, Science Future Core 3 announces 2026 release date. Yay! Woohoo! Yay! Not really a shock to anyone in the world. Dr. Stone is a huge hit in anime. One of my absolute favorite shows over the last couple of years. Again, thank God it's not an isekai. You see, you guys can make good shows without making a freaking isekai, okay? But yeah, Dr. Stone, Science Future season 4. Season 4 part 3 basically. Science Future I think counts as the 4th season of Dr. Stone. But it's broken up into, 3 seasons, 24 episodes a season. So this is going to be part 3 of season 4. Love Dr. Stone. To me, I think Dr. Stone is a shining example of, we don't always need transformations in robots, even though they're a robot, I guess. My dude, shout out Mecha Senku. But we don't need certain shonen tropes and crutches essentially to make a quality show. I mean, just quality show. Obviously the science, it's Dr. Stone. The science, the dedication to the science, right? There's some fantastical elements. You got like a 15-year-old genius able to pull all this together. But it's just the relationships between all the characters. Something we commonly say on this show is, stories about relationships between people. It's a pillar, it's a guiding light here over at UBN, and Dr. Stone is a shining example of this. Between Taiju and all of his friends from the old world and all the relationships that he makes along the way in the adventure. So glad to see that Dr. Stone's going to be back early next year, it seems like, too. So shout out to them. Shout out Dr. Stone, man. Hopefully that'll be winter season, I think. Yeah, close to winter season. We might jump on that. We might cover that week to week. So look out for that. But yeah, that's the end of story 1. Dr. Stone, love you guys. See you guys in 2026. And if you haven't watched Dr. Stone yet, honestly, come on, brother. But if you guys haven't watched Dr. Stone, go watch that. Go catch up to the Science Future season 2. Shout out to them. So yeah, moving on. This is something that really caught my eye today. This is a big deal. If you listened to the show before, shout out to all my loyal listeners, my returning listeners. I love that you guys come back for You Bleeping Nerds. You be in. Yeah, shout out to all 3 of y'all. Shout out, man. Feels good. But yeah, this is something that caught my eye just today, and I wanted to make sure I put it in front of you guys and that we talked about this. I am a doomsayer when it comes to AI. You know this about me. The singularity is real. They will replace us with the robots. And I'm terrified of it. I'm terrified of anything AI. It to me, every single entity pursuing AI, relentlessly pursuing AI, has bad intentions on some level, and I don't like it. That's probably an oversimplification, but I don't care because I'm scared. Like, no. I'm scared. No. But it's not all doom and gloom in the anime world for anime workers. And this second story we got here is a good example of that. DreamWorks animation workers achieve union milestones. Um, the union, the Anime Guild, local 839 TAG, they call themselves the Anime Guild, which is like the Animation Guild, which I love that. um, just signed the very first collective bargaining agreement for production workers at DreamWorks Animation. It's the first time that's ever happened. They basically have, their CBA ratified, their union got ratified, and this is a huge deal. This is a big deal. Anybody who follows the industry understands how competitive, how hard it is to work in the industry. The hours are long, very demanding. Standards are very high. There's some money to be made, but there's a lot of people on mid-tier and lower levels are very much day to day, like everyday people, like everyday Americans. And having when you work in art, it's not always the most stable industry. You don't always, if you're not always working on a project to work on, if you're between projects, you're not really making any money, in a lot of cases. For a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of people. If you're not working on anything, you're not getting paid, particularly, freelancers, right? They get paid literally, per project. And, to be an artist is a very volatile, very inconsistent industry. And this, collective bargaining agreement, this CBA signed here at DreamWorks is a huge deal. I want to read you guys some of these agreements that these workers fought for, in negotiations. Establish wage minimums for job classifications with yearly increases to those minimum rates, including one of the most competitive production assistant rates in the industry, right? Because it's DreamWorks, right? It's it's one of the big boys when it comes to production. So honestly, they Disney, they should always have the most competitive rates at all positions. That's just my opinion. But yeah, next, substantial reduction in healthcare coverage costs. Annual individual healthcare premium will be $0. That is fantastic. That is really fantastic. That's pretty good. You'd have to see the details of their coverage itself, but that is a level of stability that I feel like a lot of artists, production guys just don't get in this industry. They really don't get that. Healthcare's not a thing usually. You know what I mean? They try to teach them, like most of them, like freelancers. So that's pretty cool. Guaranteed retirement contributions, right? And then finally, additional 6th and 7th day pay for salaried and on-call employees, right? So if the salary game is that, you get a fixed amount of money and then they can make you work as much as they fucking want to, right? So this is a nice thing for, like, if you're salaried, you can still, and they're still working you to death because it's animation, long hours. You're getting compensated for that. So again, this is huge. They got some things in here too for remote artists, which I think is really dope. We talked about, like I said, a lot of these freelancers, a lot of these remote employees and stuff like that. They don't get any of these benefits. And apparently in the CBA, it was negotiated that they get a lot of that coverage too. That there's a quote in here where it said, "While it's a tremendous privilege to be able to work remotely in the industry I love and alongside people I love, it's unfair to be treated as a second-class employee." That's Anthony Holden, an Oregon-based story artist who's worked for DreamWorks for 7 years. So people like him, exactly, right, who we're talking about, to where he's remote, he's not freelance really, right? But he basically has worked for them for 7 years. But the nature of their contracts and the nature of the status of his employment, he didn't have health care, right? But this is his full-time job, and he didn't have health care, and it's this is such a huge win. So congratulations, clap it up Clap it up for local 839 TAG, the Animation Guild. Clap it up for them, unionizing over there at DreamWorks, getting their CBA ratified over there at DreamWorks. I love this, right? Fight for humans, right? Not robots. Stop trying to make movies. See, this is why like they see shit like this now. They're like, we have to pump $500 billion more dollars into AI. We can't have now. We got to give everybody healthcare. Like, psh. watch. By next year, they're really going to like. They're really gonna try to make entire like movies in like half an hour with like one person. Watch, and they're gonna pump that shit out, right? Companies, they're evil. They're evil. I'm trying to tell you. No, they're not. They're just greedy. They're just greedy. But shout out to the CBA. Shout out to them over there at DreamWorks. In lighter news, our last story. Something that I puts a real smile on my face. Okay. I've been a fan of this for a while. I've been waiting for this to come back. I am overjoyed to see this. Star Wars Visions Volume 3 has been announced. That's right. It is announced to be released on October 29th this year. So basically in a month. And it looks like it's gonna be a jam. This is reported all over the place. Check this out on anitrends.net. Another website. They do really, really good work. But let's fucking go. Hell yeah. Star Wars Visions. A lot of our studio, if people who don't know what Star Wars Visions is, it is an anthology series. It's basically a season of television that is made up of a bunch of short stories. Each one of the stories is typically done by a different studio. What makes Star Wars Visions unique is that obviously Star Wars is a particularly American property, and they have worked with anime studios like Wit and I think Bones, definitely Trigger, things like that, and a few others. Some less ones and not just anime studios, but like animation studios across the world. Like I know the Wallace and Gromit studio did a short, I think last season or the first season, I forget, but it was really good. It was the Mother short story, which I thought was really cute, real wholesome. But Star Wars Visions is dope. It's a combination of two of my favorite things. I love Star Wars. It's particularly animated Star Wars. I'm one of the millennials where I got into Star Wars because of the animated series and not the movies. I'm in my 30s, so Clone Wars, Rebels, and definitely I'm missing one. I'm missing a big one. But even like Bad Batch and things like that. I love animated Star Wars a lot. But what I say? Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Fantastic. Shout out to Ahsoka. You know what I'm saying? But Star Wars Vision Season 3 dropping on October 29th. Like I said, Studio Wit. If you go to Anime Trends, you can actually get a list of all of the shorts that's coming up in the season. One thing that's kind of unique about this is that we're actually going to get some sequels of some previous short stories. So that's pretty cool. One is The Duel Payback. If you guys remember, I think from the first season, that was the black and white. I think it was the first episode of the first season. It was the black and white episode with the wandering samurai duel. I think he revealed himself to be a Sith at the end. That's actually having a sequel this season here in season 3. Ninth Jedi. I think that was the second season. I forget, but yeah, that's getting a sequel. And I think one or two others are getting actually sequels to short stories from previous seasons. So that's cool, man. Like that's really cool. And then another piece of this is that one of the short stories is actually getting a limited series. So this is something that we expected, right? Like this is kind of what we figured this project was going to be all about anyway. We're just trying to find something that can be the next thing, right? Wit Studio is all over this. Project IG is all Production IG is all over this. They do really good stuff. Trigger is doing something for this, and Polygon Pictures is doing stuff for this. I love Polygon; they do great stuff too. So this is great. I'm so happy. I'm always happy to have animated Star Wars. So, that's it. That's basically it for our news segment going around the industry. It's a good time to be an anime fan. It's a good time to be a fan of animated storytelling and comic books and all that stuff, man. There's just a deluge, a pump, just an absolute potpourri of things that are really good. Like we just saw Marvel Zombies just drop. Haven't even checked that out yet, but I loved What If, at least the first 2 seasons of What If. I enjoyed, so I can't wait to see what the Marvel Zombies are about. On the DC side, watch Creature Commandos a little while ago. That was pretty good. They're gonna come out with a few more animated shows on top of it. So it's like it's just a good time. I feel like I'm swimming. I'm swimming in goodness, just swimming in fun. Wolf King on Netflix. Like there's just so many. There's so many. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and transition. We're gonna do this episode breakdown of Gachiakuta. But before that, quick catch up. As I was discussing earlier, just keep it real. Gachiakuta wasn't really hitting for me. It just wasn't. I think there was a lot of reasons for that. I think one reason is that I think the pacing of the anime versus the pacing in the manga, because I checked out a little bit of the manga earlier, is very different. The setting up of Rudo's character and exploring his life in the sphere, I thought was paced very awkwardly. Even the scene when he's cast out through the pit, to me, I thought it was animated a little weird. Kind of pretty, but a little weird. And Rudo's character, to me, is also very awkward. I find him hard to connect with. I feel bad for the little homie. I feel real bad for the little homie because life sucks. But I have a hard time connecting on an emotional level with him versus sympathize. I sympathize with him, but I'm having a hard time empathizing with him. You know what I'm saying? So, but highlights. Once we introduce the cleaners, these are some sexy characters, man. Shout out to my girl, I think Rei Urano, who did it, understudy of my dude from Fire Force. The influence to me is very apparent. The style, she has her own style, but you can definitely tell there's some similarities in the way they draw their characters, draw their scenery. But the art in the manga and the art in the anime are absolutely gorgeous. The characters, the way they're designed, the cleaners, they all look so very cool, very different. The tone of the landscape, obviously, we're on the ground. It's a wasteland, poisonous, trash, polluted wasteland on the ground on Earth. And so they do a great job of you showing the background. Everything's so dingy and dirty and just a little worn and weathered, right? But even having that tone, even having that undertone, things are here so pretty. As I said, I really love the design of the landscape, the design of the characters in the show. Just some highlights before we get into this episode breakdown. I think when we were in Art Town, Canvas Town, was one of the most beautiful experiences visually, just walking through a new environment I've seen in a long time in anime. It's just the urban graffiti style and just the use of the colors and the contrast to the, kind of trash heap dumpsteriness of everything. I thought that was really beautiful to look at. The story of Gob dying of, spoiler alert, land pollution, going outside to polluted zones. I thought that was very touching. I actually believe that was the turning point of this season for me and of this show for me is the storyline from Gob and the Canvas Town storyline. But overall, it's growing. It's growing on me. I definitely think this episode is helping. I think the last few episodes have been much more solid, more interesting. Just because we're getting deeper into the actual story. The characters are more developed. We kind of know how the power sets work and stuff like that. I thought the way they set up the power sets in the show were very awkward. The powers in the show are quite unconventional, which I enjoy. I enjoy that aspect of this show, that the power sets are quite unconventional. But just setting it up and the fights and the way the characters interacted, particularly that fight with the bandits and Jobber, I didn't think that landed. I didn't think that hit as hard as it could have, right? I think that was a moment. Usually in anime, when a moment like that's gonna be the hook, right? That episode is gonna be the hook, and it didn't really hit for me like that. That series, that fight didn't really hit for me. None of those characters hit for me. There was some intrigue that came out of that story arc, but definitely didn't. It's not like Kaiju number 8. When they went at a Tachibana base, right? It's just nothing like that, right? It just didn't hit in the same way. But there are some beautiful, there's some beautiful things, right? Beautiful themes in this show. Cherishing objects and taking good care of them, and in return, those objects taking care of you. I think that's a very poetic, beautiful theme that is woven inside of this show. I enjoy that. Seeing the value in things when people throw them away. To me, very beautiful, beautiful theme. And so it's those ideas that kept me coming back to the show and kept me hopeful that the actual happenings in the show would really start to become more intriguing. I think we're on the right track. In this episode, I think this episode goes a long way towards that. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Gachiakuta episode 11, Amo's Hospitality. Picking up from last episode, they're going through Penta, the desert no man's land. They're wearing their masks. The landscape is obviously poisonous. Remember, we brought up Gob dying of just garbage pollution, basically. So, but they meet this mysterious girl who's not wearing a mask. We see, smoke, smog, just dust and pollution floating through the air. And she's leading them through this wasteland. They're looking for Amo. Because Amo apparently is, someone who knows how to, get to the surface, or knows someone who is from the surface and can get back and forth. She knows something about getting back to the sphere. And so in this first part, she leads them. We rewind from last episode because, we left off last episode with Engine going down, right? Basically, it seemed like he getting shot, and then he just passes out and goes down to the ground, which is hell of a piece to leave us off on, all right? So this is what I mean when I say, it's finally picking up. It's much more interesting, Engine passing out mysteriously when they're talking to this, kind of creepy ass, mysterious girl, much more compelling, much more interesting, happening, mostly because I just don't find Rudo quite that compelling yet, I don't. I think everything around him is much more compelling than him and his powers, and that's okay, and that's okay because I'm still enjoying the show. But getting back to this first scene. We're rewinding back to find out what happened. Why did Engine pass out? She leads them to this tower, which apparently where she lives. They walk up the tower to the top floor, and it's her room. It's a little girl's room at the top. And what becomes pretty clear as they try to talk to her about getting back to the sphere is that I think Amo might be crazy, y'all. I think she's crazy. You just can't talk to her. She wants to talk about crushes and who do you love and what kind of type you are and how handsome everybody is. And listen, like I said, like this Gachiakuta, these are some sexy characters. These are some very, very sexy characters, both guys and girls. These are some sexy characters. But yeah, not a serious outfit here. Rudo tries to ask her, and she's just, hey baby, what do you find in a girl sexy? And Rudo's just done. He don't know how to talk to regular people, so let alone crazy people. So he was done. So Engine tries to step in, just trying to level with her, and what's starting to become apparent, it's already pretty apparent, but it's becoming more apparent by the minute that Amo is crazy. She ain't operating, it ain't all up there. It's not all up there. Highlights of this part one, animated so very beautifully. When Amo smiles, it's so creepy. The way they have her move and the way they've drawn her is so creepy and terrifying. It's fantastic. Like, the word that keeps popping in my head when I see her is disturbing. As a character, she is just disturbing. She's just disturbing to see on screen and talk. And I thought that was a really good job by them, because I'm just like, boy, I don't know what's about to happen. Well, I kind of know because he passed out, but I don't know what's going to happen, but I know this girl's nuts. Like, you can just see the signs are there. Okay? The signs are there. And, she starts to make comments about how, she loves smells, and she loves how Delmon smells. The big guy in the back, she calls him, how she loves Delmon smells. And we get to Engine passing out. And it's because Delmon attacked him with his instrument, his vital instrument. And this is where things really start to turn, right? We don't know what the hell's going on, but Engine going down, basically the leader going down. We get some information on what Delmon's weapon is. Big man's a gardener. He's got a hose apparently, and this is an example too of how creative the powers are in this show, right? Because it's not just like a hose that turns into like a weapon, like a firearm projectile, but apparently you absorb the water, right? It force absorbs water into your body, and it seems like it can kind of drown you from inside out. It can just kind of make you explode, pop like a water balloon. So, again, this is what I was hoping more for, is that how creative the powers are, and how that's being shown on screen. So this is good. This is good stuff. Everyone's shocked, confused. Delmon's professing his love for her. Screaming that he'll protect her. Zonka gets involved. Ray of Sunshine Zonka. You've been following Gachiakuta at all, he's not a Ray of Sunshine. But yeah, Ray of Sunshine Zonka, he gets involved and basically just makes it worse. Even going back before Engine gets shot by Delmon, he's just trying to talk to her. And, she's just not, she can't have a conversation. He's trying to kind of stop the whimsical nonsense. She starts crying, right? She's like, hey, you don't really love me. You just want to use me. Like, again, she's absolutely psycho. She's totally nuts, though. Like, totally fruit and nut cake, man. Just crazy, crazy. And that ends up getting Engine shot, right? Because he couldn't he couldn't keep her happy, and she, uses her currently mysterious powers to, compel Delmon to do it. So, terrifying, right? Like, how is she doing this? How is she pulling this off? Can she do it to everybody? Why is it Delmon? We don't know anything, right? Ray of Sunshine Zonka gets involved after Engine goes down. You can imagine he doesn't make anything better. He calls her a cow, which is like, she did get Engine shot, but like, come on, I feel like insulting her is not going to help anything. Also, I love how the girls, they all know like what's like what to not say. Like when Engine's just like, I'm interested in you, girl, and all the girls were like, oh Lord, no, don't say that. Like she know you lied. Don't say that. Like, oh God, don't you know anything? We'll see if the women are like a key of combating her later. But yeah, Delmon goes on the attack. Rudo starts freaking out. He starts hallucinating. Again, understanding this is Amo's powers. We don't know what they are quite yet, but we understand that this is a result of her powers, whatever they are. Rudo's hallucinating about being back in the sphere, even though he thinks he's on the ground, and then the apostle soldiers, putting his hands on him, and kind of we get another taste of Delmon's powers. We get a more further explanation of what he does. And, we see the form changes, right? Like he has different little modes, right? It's a hose, right? So he has different little modes and nozzles and different things. So getting to see, the power sets of some of the of another cleaner more. And this is where the episode definitely goes more into the psychological aspects. We're seeing the mental torture that Rudo goes under. He's reminiscing about giving the stuffed animal to the girl on the sphere before, he was cast out like Lucifer. Cast out like Lucifer from the sphere, and, how she ends up throwing it away, rejecting his young love. Very, very sad way to open the series. But yes, he starts hallucinating about that and forgetting where he is, and this is just a good watch, right? This is a good watch. This is fun to see him, kind of combat this. Amo's making the comment that another one of you is a fan of Amo. It's clearly, Rudo is under her spell, or at least becoming more under her spell, which makes me wonder with Delmon, like, damn, like you fell quick for her. I don't know what she did to you, but you were gone from the jump, because it's taken Rudo a minute. He's got to freak out for a bit before he's over there. But yeah. Moving on to part 3. Amo's still nuts. Yep. Definitely still nuts. More nuts than ever. The way they animate her mannerisms is just getting creepier and creepier. I love it. The artwork in this episode is fantastic. The way that, they start to, the way they animate the creepiness, the dark sinisterness, like the features and tone around her become more sinister and scary, and just as the episode continues, you really start to feel it, right? The darkness around her. I think Amo's really a star in this episode. I definitely think, like, I feel like Jobber was supposed to give me a similar feeling, and I think they kind of missed on that. Here with Amo, they absolutely hit on the tone of like this terrifying situation with this creepy ass sinister girl they found themselves with. So, but I think it's Zanka notices that there's a certain scent in the air. Everybody kind of notices, and then, um, this is something that I have a problem, and this happens in the shonen. This is targeted towards young teens and young people, so sometimes we're not always the most elegant in the way we get things across. But Amo basically explains her powers, that like I create sense. I'm a giver that creates sense, and those scents make you nostalgic, and then nostalgic makes you, think remind you of someone that you love, and then you'll, basically take, hallucinate that person and then protect me, right? They basically said, they did it just like that. They basically did it like that. She pretty much just explained her entire power set right then and there. And I'm gonna be honest, I thought that was pretty, I thought that was pretty ham-handed. I thought that was pretty ham-handed. Just kind of a brute force way to move us forward in the story, so we can kind of get on to the next phase of it. I just thought that could have been done more delicately, right? It was just very clear that like we just wanted to kind of get what her powers were at this point of this episode out there. So I thought that could have been done more elegantly. I thought that was a little hammy, a little rough there. But, not the worst thing in the world, right? I don't think this season's going to be anime of the year, but I think this is a good anime, and I think the potential for this to be really, really great is still there. But like, it's just little moments like that where I'm just kind of like, nah, okay. We could have done a little better there with the reveal of what her actual powers are. But yeah, her powers are, kind of like pheromone based, essentially. Playing on the idea that, the strongest sense tied to memory is smell. That is a scientific fact. So, it seems like her powers play on an extreme version of that. I think that's, again, pretty darn creative. Nobody's powers in this show, maybe outside of Zanka, nobody's powers in this show are really straightforward at all. They all are very convoluted and have kind of like layers to it, and they're not the conventional anime power set abilities. I can tell everybody's abilities, the way Rei Orano decided to create these people is it's never what you quite expect. It's never straightforward, right? It's very creative abilities, and I appreciate that. Another show that's like that to me, Bungo Stray Dogs, is like that to me, to where all the powers are very different and creative, and not always super straightforward and obvious. And I think Gachiakuta is showing us a lot of that. But yeah, her powers are pheromones. So obviously they get that bright idea to put their mask back on, because fucking duh, that's why she told you to take them off. But apparently it's too late, because we look around and all of the cleaners, a red-haired girl, Rudo's long gone, Delma and still follow. They're all under her spell. They've all been enchanted by her smell power. And Zanka and my one giver, whose name I don't know, with the white hair and kind of beige, glowing beige eyes, basically say, we're going to have to fight him. They have to fight him, and then he reveals a little bit of reveals of his vital instrument. And that's where they leave us in the episode. So, next episode, we're going to see the fight. We're going to see the reveal of his powers, and, how they're going to get out of this mess dealing with crazy-ass Amo. Overall, as I said, solid episode. Solid episode of TV. Beautiful scenery. Walking through the way the tower that Amo lived in, the way that's drawn, the scenery around that, the landscapes in the desert, like the detail in it, I think it's very beautiful. Again, her art style is gorgeous. Shout out to you, Rei Orano. Uh, Absolutely beautiful. The way the characters are designed again, I love seeing all the cleaners together. I think they're designed really cool. Delmon's weapon, seeing his powers, I think his powers are very creative, very interesting. I like how those are designed. Um, the psychological elements, going back to Rudo's past in the sphere and, seeing how he still feels about that young lady in that moment that he shared with her, even though she abandoned him, but whatever. Strong. I mean, I think the star of the episode is Amo. She was sinister, terrifying. Her mannerisms, when Delmon's yelling, defending her honor, and just the terrifying. They remind me of the one minister from Fire Force. He was a member of the White Clad, but he was I forget his name, but him with the fire fist, he was cool. Reminded me of him, just like the guy with the star in his eyes. Yeah, him. Like the way he just gave you crazy, sinister, lunatic smiles. The way Amo's facial expressions and mood just swung at the top of her hat, and the way they animated the darkness around her. I thought it was fantastic. So shout out to Amo. I think she was great. Good episode. I give it like a B plus. Oh, and like the music. Amo's psycho monologue at the end in part 3. The music underneath that was great. I think that's something the show could use a little more too. I think they need to add a little more music elements underneath these scenes. Maybe make them hit a little harder. Maybe they'll help them hit me a little harder. But again, solid episode. I'm interested to see where we're going from here in the fight. So that's it for our episode breakdown of Gachiakuta, episode 11. Amo's Hospitality. Here on You Bleepin' Nerds, UBN. Check us out on Monday, where we will be coming back to Kaiju number 8. It's my jam. You know what I mean? That's my absolute jam, and we're getting busy over there with all those kaiju. They're attacking the whole continent. Kaiju everywhere, and it's going to be great. And then check us in next Friday. We're going to do episode 12 of Gachiakuta and give you some more industry news. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for hanging out with us here at You Bleepin' Nerds, UBN. I am your humble host, your boy A. And I will see you guys Monday for our Kaiju number 8 episode breakdown. You guys take care. I'll see you next week. Peace.